The Game Boy Advance is one of the greatest systems ever made, and it has one of the greatest libraries ever to match. There are games on this system that changed the way we looked at entire genres, or redefined the series they came from. And with the rumor that this console is now going to be available on NSO thanks to last week's emulator leak, I wanted to take a moment to talk about some of the best games on the system. But I don't want to go over the usual suspects. We all know that Castlevania is great on here, we know about Mega Man Battle Network, we know about Sonic, we know about Minish Cap. Today, let's talk about some of the hidden gems on Nintendo's little portable that could.
Spring is here, and I want some fresh food to really pair well with this nice weather. Thankfully, HelloFresh is there to accommodate that seasonal desire. Not only is there a ton of varieties such as the citrus pork tacos, sun-dried tomato spaghetti, and asparagus and mushroom truffle pizza, but a guarantee that they'll be absolutely fresh. The produce is picked at peak ripeness and sent from US farmers to my front door in less than a week. And those are only a few of my picks. Look at all these recipes that provide a ton of variety. No 2 weeks are the same, and prep is kept easy with pre-portioned ingredients. I personally loved my recent Indian-style chicken curry meal. Try it for yourself by using my link or go to HelloFresh.com and use the code POGGVG16 for up to 16 free meals plus 3 surprise gifts across 6 HelloFresh boxes plus free shipping. Seriously, it's easy to be adventurous and try a bunch of new flavors, especially with the weather getting nicer thanks to HelloFresh.
Kurukuru is a simple game but an addictive one. You control this little stick called a helirine, or helicopter in the European version, and you make your way through mazes. As its name implies, the helirine is constantly spinning, meaning you'll need to have good timing to get through some of the game's narrow sections. It's a game that starts out easy, but gets much more difficult as you progress. It was made by Aiding, who would go on to work on Pikmin 3 Deluxe. It also got a sequel, Kurukuru Paradise, in 2002. Paradise was announced for the US at E3 that year, but never released here or in Europe. These two simple games are among the GBA's most addictive titles. You've probably heard of Rhythm Heaven, but did you know that it was actually the second game in its series? Rhythm Tengoku, which coincidentally means Rhythm Heaven in Japanese, was released on the Game Boy Advance in 2006. It's made by the same team behind the WarioWare games, and you can feel that team's distinctive style throughout the game. Rhythm Tengoku is like a collection of lost microgames most of the world never got to see. Mario Kart Super Circuit was trash. But you know what wasn't? Konami Crazy Racers. Yeah, that's right, the famous pachinko machine company used to make games, and some of them were even pretty good. It looks and feels like a lost SNES game, and what other kart racer lets you pair Goemon against Gray Fox from Metal Gear? Crazy Racers was one of my first GBA games, and it's a shame more people haven't played it. I'm not the world's biggest Rayman fan, but Rayman 3 for the GBA is something special. It's one of the first games I saw on the Game Boy Advance that looked better than something that the Super NES could handle. Rayman's sprite is nice and big, and the world is beautifully detailed. And that's not even counting the game's pseudo 3D sections that feature an effect that would make Mode 7 jealous. And if you've played Rayman 3 somewhere else, the GBA version is nothing like it. It plays like the original Rayman, but the plot and characters are all from Rayman 2, making the portable version an oddity in the series. I highly recommend checking it out, especially if you love whatever the heck Rayman is. We've talked about the Klonoa remasters on the channel a lot lately, but you know what isn't included in those? Klonoa Empire of Dreams, a Game Boy Advance exclusive entry in the series that features some of the best platforming on the system. Empire of Dreams' level design isn't just great for the Game Boy, but it's some of the best I've seen in 2D platformers in general. It's a fast-moving, unique take on the genre that deserves to be played by so many more people. DrillDozer is one of those games everyone recognizes as a good game and hasn't played for some reason. You play as a pink-haired girl in a mech suit who drills her enemies to death. What else do you need to know? It has one of the best soundtracks I've ever heard on the Game Boy Advance, you can customize your DrillDozer, and it has an over-the-top, anime-as-heck story that you won't be able to get enough of. While all of you are out here complaining at Game Freak about trees, I'm harassing them for a new DrillDozer. Be on the right side of history. Remember FZero? Neither does Nintendo. For those of you who do remember it, it might surprise you to learn that Nintendo made an entry in the series for the Game Boy Advance and then promptly released it to precisely nobody outside of Japan. Climax looks and feels like what we would get if Nintendo had made a follow-up to F-Zero on the SNES.
Wait, they did?
In Japan only? On the Satellaview? What the f***? Climax looks and feels like what we would get if FZero 3 had released on the SNES, and if Mode 7 had been improved to not be quite so nausea-inducing. If you're a fan of Nintendo's least favorite franchise, you need to try Climax. Crash Bandicoot, known betrayer of PlayStation, made loads of appearances on the GBA, and you know what? Some of them were actually good. The Huge Adventure was a surprisingly uncompromising experience for a 3D franchise making the jump to a primarily 2D console. Everything you'd expect from a Crash game is here: precise platforming, bonus stages, and even chase sequences. If you haven't tried one of Crash's games on GBA, you're in for a surprisingly good time. Treasure doesn't miss, especially in the late 90s and early 2000s. Their games were the stuff of legend. I would have loved to see them take on Mega Man, but I'm not upset that we got the next best thing with Astro Boy. Enemies move just like what you would expect if you had played Gunstar Heroes, and controlling Astro Boy feels like a mix of Mega Man and Guardian Heroes, another Treasure game. It's fantastic, and pretty challenging too. Speaking of Guardian Heroes, did you know one of the best beat-em-ups of all time got a sequel on the Game Boy Advance? Worst yet, the game is marooned on the GBA, never having been released anywhere, not on the Virtual Console, and not ported to anything. Advance Guardian Heroes is another fantastic game that you should pick up if you have the opportunity. It isn't as good as the Saturn original, which you can get on Xbox Live and play on the Series X and S for just a few bucks, but it is a great game nonetheless. A lot of Dreamcast ports ended up on the Game Boy Advance, but none were quite as well received as Choo Choo Rocket. Sonic Team's puzzle game about getting alien mice to their spaceship was simple but addictive. Mice would follow a set route, and you could lay a limited number of tiles in each level to change their direction and guide them to safety. The Game Boy wasn't the best way to play it, but with the iOS and Android versions being delisted and the Dreamcast servers having long been shut down, the Game Boy Advance is actually the most accessible version. Weird, huh? Custom Robo, one of the only Nintendo-published games on this list. The Custom Robo series is all about arena-based mech combat on a micro scale. The stakes are usually huge, involving potentially world-ending plots, but the battle takes place in an arena the size of toys. GX may not be 3D like the rest of the series, but the combat is so good. It captures the feeling of the 3D entries so well. This is one of my favorite GBA games and one of my favorite series. If you haven't tried it yet, you owe it to yourself to pick it up. When the legendary Starfy came out for the DS, it gathered a cult following, and for good reason. The cute cartoony visuals and simple but fun puzzle platforming made the series a cult classic, which is why it's baffling that the first 3 games, all of which are on the GBA, never made it out of Japan. Worse yet, all 3 of them are published by Nintendo. I don't have a ton of hope for these games seeing the light of day, but if Nintendo wanted to put these on Nintendo Switch Online at some point, you wouldn't find me complaining. Did you know that none other than Shigeru Miyamoto produced a licensed game for the Game Boy Advance? That's right, Pax Softnica, the developers of Snoopy Concert, which, if you're not familiar with, check out John's video on that, approached Nintendo for a portable title as well, in Hamtaro Ham Ham Heartbreak. I saw this game all over shelves in the early 2000s, and I had no idea Nintendo had worked on this internally. Looking at it now, it shares a lot in common with Snoopy Concert, so if you're looking for another weirdly obscure title with Nintendo's DNA on it, look no further. I know at this point you're probably wondering why I haven't mentioned Mother 3, and guess what? I'm still not going to. Instead, let's talk about Sword of Mana, which is kind of like Mother 3, except for the fact that it isn't at all. It was, however, developed in part by Brownie Brown, which worked with HAL on Mother 3. If you're looking for an SNES-style RPG for the GBA, however, you could do a whole lot worse than Sword of Mana. Oh, Alpha Dream, I miss you so much. If Tomato Adventure looks like a Mario and Luigi game, that's because it's made by the team best known for that series. A year before the first Mario and Luigi game was released, Alpha Dream shipped Tomato Adventure, which is remarkably similar to the Mario and Luigi series, but which never left Japan. It arrived on the Wii U Virtual Console in 2015, but by that point the Wii U only existed for Nintendo fans to complain about the Wii U. What if I told you Donkey Kong Country had a long-lost cousin on the Game Boy Advance? What if I told you that you probably missed it because its box art looked like this? Yeah, that's right. Saber Wolf for the GBA is developed by none other than Rare themselves. In fact, the series dates all the way back to the ZX Spectrum and is one of Rare's oldest franchises. Playing this game feels like Rare wondered what it would be like to make a DKC game without Donkey Kong, and though it never hits the same highs as their magnum opus, it's a pretty fun adventure nonetheless, and one that has never been re-released anywhere else. More people deserve to play this game. So there you have it. Those are our favorite GBA games that nobody really talks about. Hopefully we covered your favorites in the list, but if we didn't, let us know which GBA game you're super passionate about with a comment down below. Now that we've got GBA covered, hopefully Nintendo can really give people what they actually want.